Hello, hello, and welcome back. Um, Here with me, I have Edio.
I
Bro's like an NPC, opened the same way as last time. Anyway,
come on.
um, we got the Unit 2 review for
It's rewind time.
a get, buddy, you get new dialogue, please.
Okay, continue.
Alright, so the Unit 2 is all about networks of exchange, both how they were created, how they were managed, and what the effects of them were. There were the three main networks were the Silk Roads, the Indian Ocean, and the Trans-Saharan trade. And the main empire of this is definitely the Mongols, of course. So the Silk Roads, well, I guess networks of exchange in general, they encourage flourishing culture and economies, as well as the spread of knowledge and the spread of technology. They basically just the spread of almost anything. Um, and the first expansions of these happened due to technological advancements. So the Silk Roads are land routes through Central Asia that go through a lot of caravanserai. They use camel caravans, and they eventually started to go through um, bigger cities as caravanserai evolved to larger cities. And as they did this, they were transporting mainly luxury goods because it was much more profitable to carry a few things that you could sell for a lot of money than a lot of things that you could sell for money because camels can only hold so much weight. Um, the main technologies were the caravanserai caravans. However, other technologies that did help were banking practices, flying money, and bills of exchange, which all kind of helped produce a money economy where even though you're still technically trading, you're using this one government approved form of currency that acts as sort of a universal way to buy things. Whereas before they would use a barter economy that was more of like, I'll give you X if you give me Y. Now it's just, I'll give you X if you give me the cost of X. Um, and the social ramifications of the Silk Road, there was a lot more, even more commercialization of the Chinese economy. One example being the Yangtze River Valley. A lot of the people there switched from farming to just making silks because even though they had like a little bit less food, they could just make silks and get the money to go buy food. And the bubonic plague spreads a lot because of the Silk Roads. And because of how big they were, it spread really fast and across all of Afro-Eurasia. And because of this, that led to more focus being put onto the Indian Ocean trade as the Silk Roads kind of died. The Indian Ocean trade, they traded primarily in bulk goods because they could hold a lot more on their boat and just transport it further distances in like large quantities, which gave them, even though like small margins of income, they got lots of those small margins, which eventually led to larger income. The main technologies, chunks and dhows, were good for holding all of that bulk cargo. They were very, very big, and they were very good at having like just all of that and still going fast. Lateen sails were used to catch winds from all sides, so that you weren't completely reliant on having to catch the wind from blowing towards your destination, which means they didn't need people rowing all the time. Then the knowledge of the monsoon winds. This is one of the biggest things for the trade, which it basically was they were the seasonal winds that switched twice a year, blowing one direction to the other. So as the knowledge of the monsoon winds grew, people were able to better traverse the Indian Ocean and were able to sell more. And then there's the magnetic compass and the astrolabe for navigational accuracy, um, which just helps people like all the sailors kind of know where they were going a bit better. Some social ramifications. Diaspora communities are established. These are mainly established in Southeast Asia, but they are also in the Swahili Coast, for example. They are everywhere, but the main two, I guess, would be the Swahili Coast and Southeast Asia. Then there's the growth of states just from all over, because many states, now that they are being traded with more, they start growing as they get more money, and the Swahili language emerges, which, as we talked about before, is a mixture of the more spoken languages that were used, just added onto an Arabic script, and also Swahili just develops further as they like work more with the Muslims. In the trans-Saharan trade, the big technology here was the camel saddle. It was a saddle that just allowed. I mean, there's a lot of different versions, but generally it was just allowed the camel to hold more, and like allowed for a more comfortable ride, so that you could actually ride longer. Um, Mansa Musa was a huge social figure during this time. He was he's like the richest person in human history, and his wealth is completely incalculable. Like even today, we don't really have the idea of how wealthy he was.
The
However,
emperor of the Mali Empire, Mansa Musa, was literally so rich that he broke the economies of other African regions around him.
and like wherever he traveled on his pilgrimage to Mecca, he would give out gold to the poor, and they just everything went to like, ugh,
Yeah,
it
everywhere.
was bad. So he just got was so rich that he accidentally destroyed an economy. Actually, many economies. West Africa, speaking of Mali, their main products across the Trans-Saharan were gold, salt, and slaves. Um, Gold, obviously, is gold. It looks pretty, so people wanted to buy it. Salt is a necessity to life. You do need it to function as a human person, yet it is weirdly hard to get for being such a necessity for everybody. And the West African states had a lot of salt from salt mines, so they were able to get lots of that out and sell a lot of it. And then finally, some slaves are sold, not as much as to extent as maybe the transatlantic later, but at a smaller scale, they were still sold. The general effects of these networks of exchange: the spread of crops, spread of literature, knowledge, and disease. Like, um, eventually the bubonic plague was spread. Knowledge from maybe the like astronomers in the Abbasid Caliphate, or I guess the Seljuks as well. They would bring that knowledge maybe to China, or maybe to the Swahili coast. They would bring that knowledge around. And then spread of literature, again, they would just kind of spread the books around, and that would help people kind of become more educated. The Mongols are the main focus of this unit. They became the largest continuous empire in world history. They did this through military tactics. So they used horses for a low supplied, foraging capable army, which means they didn't bring that many supplies with them. They were able to just forage off the land in many cases, which made them a lot faster because they didn't need to carry all of those supplies. Of course, carrying caravans is incredibly difficult because it makes you so much slower because of the weight of the caravan. So if you just get food when you get there, you're going to be going a lot faster. Then there's the fifth gate walking pattern. It's a walking pattern for the horse that has almost no bounce for the rider, which means you can go a lot further as a rider on a horse um, than you could without the fifth gate. And also, it kind of um sorry, what it I don't know. I lost track of that. Um anyway, so yeah, the fifth gate was just, it was better for walking longer distances as a rider, and uh that helped them just kind of be faster, because even though they might not be going as fast as like they could be in a short distance, because could do it for so much longer, they would end up going a lot further. Um, then there's horseback archery. They were incredibly skilled at horseback archery. They made the compound bow, which is a bow made of multiple parts. It has a wooden core. A sinew is applied to the bow for structure. Then two levers of sorts are applied to the ends of the bow, which is what gives the bow most of its power. They kind of act as the muscles, as well as wooden linings towards the edge also act as sort of muscles for this bow. And when you draw back, the levers you are used as leverage on those muscles a bit more. So that made the bow. You could have a really small compound bow that was stronger than even maybe a long bow. They were incredibly powerful, and tons of different nations had their own versions of the compound bow, because compound bow just means a bow forged, like made with multiple parts. But the Mongol compound bow was exceptional. It was one of the best bows at the time, and still, even now, it's a very good bow. And they also used the separation of tens. So they separated their army by groups of tens, hundreds, and thousands, which helped just for army organization for the most part. That just allowed them to kind of not get confused as easily. Some other technologies not here. They had a special kind of armor that it was basically a lot of overlapped plates. So it was durable, like similar to plate armor, but also it was a lot easier to repair. Because when it comes to plate armor, it's very difficult to repair dents in it because you have to take the entire piece and then fix it all at once and hope that you don't break, like the repair person doesn't break it again. Whereas with the Mongol armor, it had a lot of smaller overlapping sections. So if you were hit in one spot, you could just take any plate that was damaged and then just replace them. You didn't need to replace the entire piece of armor. They also used war drums and signal arrows. War drums were the best way to communicate to the entire army certain larger scale orders, and whistling arrows or signal arrows, they could be used. They made this very clear whistling sound, and in singular when using a singular arrow, sometimes a message was attached. So a commander might know, they might hear the whistle and they hear where the arrow lands. They can go grab the arrow, read the message, and now they know what their current orders are. Or in larger volleys, they would also use signal arrows to point around where an army, like where a charge should happen. So if if there was a large volley of whistling arrows, a smaller group could know that this is their time, or this is where they have to charge. Um, they also had really nice spears, though of course the bows were still their main way of fighting. Every single Mongol soldier was trained with the bow, but some were trained with hook spears. And if you could use the hook spear correctly, you could very easily take out any horseback opponent um, without even really putting in effort. Um, and then finally, the war mace. The war mace also was a generally horseback weapon that was extremely heavy and was able to very easily pierce things like plate armor. Or not pierce, but damage internal organs. Um, so the Mongols, as they also used fear tactics. If they basically, their idea was, if we can scare people into just agreeing to surrender, then we don't have to fight and we don't risk the chance of losing somebody. So as they conquer, they're extremely tolerant, religious and culturally. They a lot of times will adopt the practices of people living there. Um, and the after the death of Genghis Khan, the four continents split up. So the Golden Horde rules through tributary systems over Eastern Europe and northwestern Asia, being Russia, or the Moscow and surrounding city states. Um, they they didn't have as much power over these smaller city states, like directly. They just used tributary systems, and they were powerful enough to where they could enforce that. They were able to very easily storm any of the cities that were erected at that time. So they just said, "Hey, if you don't pay us, we'll just destroy your city." Um, and they kind of used that sort of fear tactics from before and just used that to get money from their city states. The Ilkhanate ruled over Persia and Anatolia, and most of the Mongol elite for the all the other khanates would come from there. And they were especially tolerant of Islam, and many converted. Like, it was probably more rare to find a Mongol who hadn't converted. That was just how widespread it was. Then there's the Chagatai Khanate. They were probably the least important, though they ruled over the center of the empire, and the Yuan dynasty was the most powerful. They were ruled under Kublai Khan, and they had achieved the Chinese Mandate of Heaven. They did this sort of by taking some Chinese customs, like the name dynasty. They used that to basically take over and say we are the new rightful rulers of China. And then they basically took the entire imperial bureaucracy, and they actually improved it at ways like the Yam system. It was basically a postal system that was extremely good. It used relay stations and extremely fast runners and riders, to the point where they would use their horses so fast that they would have to wrap a sash around their abdomen to make sure that their organs didn't rupture. They would have to literally like wrap themselves in this elaborate silk because of how fast they were going on their horse. And they were like belled sashes, so a relay station would know they were coming from a far away place, and they could get a horse ready, and these messengers would be able to just kind of jump off their horse, and then jump on the new one, and it made one of the best bureaucracy bloodlines, if you will, where messages could get around extremely fast, and there was very little times where they would like lose messages. And they do, however, get rid of the civil service exam in exchange for just appointing foreign people from the Ilkhanate. Because they're racist, they didn't like the Chinese that much. Um,
So eventually, the Mongol Empire went through a period of peace called Pax Mongolica, in which basically, once they conquered most of Eurasia, they entered, just an entire overall, just period of stability. They did this mostly, through increase of trade and, cultural diffusion, basically. And they also adopted many cultural and religious norms of the places they conquered. Or most of the time, like whenever they would go to like one of the places they went, like the Middle East, the Mongol leader would convert or adopt Islam as their major religion.
mm. And they also had full control, almost full control of the Silk Roads, which during the time where the Silk Roads were mainly in power through defending caravans, they would be able to leverage power over a lot of the people traveling them, which helped further for that piece. And that's all the important stuff, the super important stuff from Unit 2.